Hi there, you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, produced here in Sydney, Australia. My name's Matt Wakeling, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now today we speak to Joel Hoekstra. Now Joel's got to be one of the most talented and hard-working guitar players on the planet right now. In just the last 6 months or so, he's completed tracking the latest Whitesnake album. That's his regular gig alongside Red Beach on guitar, working for their boss David Coverdale. He's done a couple of sold-out Las Vegas runs with Cher and played a massive amount of shows with the Siberian Orchestra over the Christmas period. Joel has also worked with bands such as Foreigner. He had an extended run in Night Ranger, not only replacing Jeff Watson, but totally pulling off Watson's 8-finger guitar style. Joel talks us through pit work, working in orchestra pits for musicals on and off Broadway, including the massive hit Rock of Ages, which not only saw Joel playing in the pit, but also on stage as part of the acting/musical ensemble. Now, amongst this incredible career as a sideman, Joel has also managed to release some fantastic solo albums. The track you're hearing now is called Homework from the 2000 album Undefined. Joel's latest solo release is Dying to Live under the name of Joel Hoekstra's 13. It's more of a hard-rocking vocal type focus. It's part of a track called Anymore.
Whispered in my ear, you showed me fantasies that only disappear. Yeah. I'll never know why it felt so right to doubt it all the wrong. Blind to the consequence seduced by your soul.
My thanks go out to Joe Elliott. Now, Joe was on episode number 40 of the podcast, a fantastic guitar player himself. And my thanks go to Joe because he introduced me to Joel, which I really, really appreciate. Now, I do need to let you know, the first 3 minutes or so of the interview, the audio is not awesome. The Wi-Fi connection with Joel wasn't great, but he ended up relocating and we sorted it. So if you can bear with us for the first couple of minutes, the audio definitely improves. And it's worth it. Joel's such a humble and friendly guy. It was so good to hear about his career and his take on many, many things. So let's just jump straight in. Here's my conversation with Joel Hoekstra. Joel Hoekstra, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, man, our great, great pleasure. I was going to say you look like you're having a really busy year, but I think that's just your story full stop by the looks of things.
Yeah, things take, I guess, the last 10 years or so now. So I've been really busy. Yeah, it's a good thing. I like to stay busy so I can keep moving forward.
So I might just pick out a few things that I've seen you up to recently, and I'd certainly love to talk about your most recent solo project as well. But recently you finished up some guitars on the latest Whitesnake album. Now, by my reckoning, is this the first Whitesnake album of original material you have contributed to?
Yeah, yeah. I joined the band. We were working on the Purple album, so which are David's songs. So it's so now people call it a covers. I'm like, is it a cover album? I don't know. We're gonna re-record things that he had written, or co-written. But this is the first one that's all entirely original, and so very excited about it.
Yeah, awesome. I read on your Instagram you wrote that this album will be the best representation of your playing to date. Now, given your incredible solo albums and your other recorded output, that's a pretty big call. Can you explain a little bit more what you meant by that?
I felt like Dave really let me have a go at it. I felt like I, have a lot of good hanging on the album. And, I think, throughout the session, I was very psyched about it. So I think, I like to play a lot of my solo albums, but it isn't necessarily what the these days in terms of, the like Undefined was kind of more of a fusion album, or I don't even know what you call that album. It was, but it was an instrumental guitar album,
Yeah, for sure.
These days I've become much more of a blues in a band kind of thing. There's a solo in it, but I'm also much about the rhythm guitar, and so I felt like I got a lot of styles and kind of variety represented on the new Whitesnake, which I think is cool. I think that's a feather in the cap, not a one-dimensional dude, and it all seems to work with the white style. So I'm psyched about that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What's the process like in terms of writing? Do you get involved in writing, or are you turning up to play on songs?
Yeah, I had a hand in about half of the songs, and it's not, songs aren't exactly what I would call mine, because usually they start with David, and Dave will need it to go somewhere, so you'll help him with where a song could go.
Hmm.
And he works really quickly, and he's very creative and very fast. You're right. He'll have an idea, and if it's it's nothing he wants to that he would hear, I'll tell you right away, which I appreciate, because this, you don't want to have somebody tell you it's not really thinking. So he's straight skinny on it. So yeah, I had a hand in about half of the songs.
Okay, that's great.
But we have too much material for the record right now. We're going to have to actually, like, I'd say about 6 songs too many. So we worked on a lot. So we'll see what actually makes the record.
All right, this is the point in which we decided the Wi-Fi connection wasn't really happening, so we reconnected, and from here on, the audio is much better. Okay, back to the interview. Right, we'll jump back in, and so we're talking about the Whitesnake record.
Yeah.
I was asking about the writing process. So you were saying that you had co-written about half of the songs?
Yeah, exactly. I'm in on about half of it, and some of it is just contributing like one of the riffs, and some of it's contributing all of the riffs. With Whitesnake, pretty much all the vocal melodies and lyrics are going to be David's.
Okay.
So you're pretty much going to write like the riff end of things.
Okay, that's cool. Now, Reb Beach has been in the band for a number of years as well. Tell me about working with Reb.
Oh, Reb's great, man. Very talented guy, super funny, great bandmate. We work really well together. This whole lineup actually has been great. The 2 tours that we've done, and the 2 recording processes, the 2 records, everybody's gotten along great, and that goes a long way. There's no tension in the band, so that's all good.
Yeah, awesome. It's got to be fun. And it's a huge year for Whitesnake, being the 30th anniversary of the 1987 record. So those tours must be going off.
Yeah. For me, it's more about like what's happening now, obviously. But
Sure.
I think that's awesome because it raises awareness of the band and everything, and that's fantastic.
That's cool. Well, I'm super excited about the new record for sure. When is that expected to be released?
I don't know if there's anything set in stone per se, but I think David had mentioned probably spring of 2018.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely looking forward to that. That's fantastic. Another one of your many, like you must be the hardest working guitar player in showbiz right now, I reckon. Another one of your fairly long-standing gigs is the Siberian Orchestra, which looks like that must be such a fun gig to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's something I'm in my 8th year on now, right about to set off for rehearsals fairly soon for the winter tour. And so, yeah, very, very excited about that. Great bunch of guys, over the years I've just got to be good friends with everybody in the band. And so it's just special. It's kind of become a tradition for me, as well as many of the fans that come to the show.
You guys are super busy in that period. I was counting up. You've got something like 54 shows in 6 weeks. You're doing plenty of those like matinee and then evening shows. So you're often doubling up on the same night.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of 2 show a day moments happening. Usually you do 8 a week is the typical TSO work week. So it's, I call it the Marines of rock. It's definitely not for the Marines of hard. You have to be really ready to work super hard. Yeah. But I actually kind of get addicted to it, It's like I said, I've been doing this for a while now, so I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. I when I'm out with a normal band playing 3-4 shows a week, I get antsy. Like, aren't we going to do any 2-show days? And it's really hard work, but it's also very rewarding. I like the gig a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, the great arrangements of those epic Christmas tunes and other stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. What sort of rig will you take out for that tour?
That is just totally, running direct. That's like a Fractal XFX2, I think, is the
Okay.
unit that I've been using, and really that's about it. And then I use a bunch of guitars because it's very heavy on the visual thing.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of fun for me to be able to swap out. And because we're running direct on a lot of stuff, I'll use the Fernandez sustainer on a lot of guitars
Oh, okay.
to emulate feedback and the kind of cycle of overtones that you would normally get.
Yeah, sure. If you're standing near your amp. Cool. How does that differ, say, from your Whitesnake rig then? So when you're touring with those guys?
It's totally different. I mean, with Whitesnake, we're doing the old school, like, loud amps on stage.
Yeah.
I've been using the Friedman BE100s on that. Although on the record, I used a bunch of stuff. I used a Marshall modded JCM 800, the Friedman BE100. I used a new head from Victory.
Okay.
That came out. I forget the model number escapes me right now because it was brand new.
Nice.
And
Yeah, they're back to it.
Metza Barba. I've been using those, and so we toyed around with a lot of amps and got a bunch of different tones. And then to compensate and keep it consistent, I really just used one guitar for about 95% of the album. So
Okay.
I used my gold top on almost the whole thing.
That's your classic. How long have you had that guitar for?
I think I got it back in right about like 2004, I want to say, something like that. So it's been with me a while. 2005, maybe.
Yeah, cool. Have you done any mods on that, or is it pretty much stock?
Very close to stock. I mean, the tuners have been swapped out a couple of times. The stop tailpiece has been swapped out a couple of times because it'll wear a groove into it. And, it's been refretted recently. But in terms of pickups and stuff like that, and frets, it's kind of, I do always just like to keep it as close to stock as possible. If a guitar doesn't work, if you don't like it, then get another one. That's my view. I don't have time to do like the swap pickups in and out and test it and see what I think, and it's just not me.
Sure.
If I don't like a guitar, I get rid of it.
Sure. Oh, I've seen you playing plenty of Les Pauls. A lot of them have got really great paint jobs, by the way. I like the Joel Hoekstra's 13 one you're working on at the moment. That looks super cool.
Oh yeah, cool. Thanks, man.
Is it the same story with those other Gibsons? With apart from the graphics, are they similar story? You keep those kind of stock?
Those are just those are just regular USA Gibson customs.
Yeah.
Not USA Gibson, Gibson custom shops.
Okay.
But yeah, I had Steve Christmas at the custom shop help me out with those two, and I think it was, I forget who came up with the stencil job there. Anthony Bass, I think.
Okay.
Came up with the stencil design, and I had those medallions made at a mint that I wanted to have embedded in the guitars. That was kind of part of the plan.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Very cool. What else has been happening? So you had a run of shows with Cher over in Las Vegas earlier this year?
Yeah, I did 2 residencies with her in Vegas and 1 in National Harbor, which is in the Washington, D.C. area, basically. So, yeah, that was kind of out of left field, but I knew Whitesnake wasn't going to tour this year, so I reached out to a bunch of my friends and said, keep me in mind if there's anything, and I ended up getting the call to sub on that.
Okay.
And at what was initially going to be just one short run, actually they needed me a little longer, so that worked out great because it kind of filled the year for me.
Yeah, cool, man. That's great. I saw some pictures of you playing on that gig. You look like you were playing a Jackson. Is that a Phil Collen model?
It is, yeah. That's Mike Tempesta at Jackson helped me out with that.
Nice.
And that's another one of the guitars with the sustainer in it. So that's great for TSO as well. You'll usually see me use that on that gig.
Okay.
And with Cher, there was the cabinets were ISO cabs, so still kind of the same story. Even though you're using real amps, the sustain isn't as great as it would be if you had the cabinet behind you.
Yeah.
On the deck, so it's still nice to have that guitar. like for the soloing end of things when I was working the stage with her and all that stuff. It's kind of nice to know a note's going to ring when you go to play it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. That's cool. Now, going from your most recent solo project, the Joel Hoekstra 13, it doesn't sound like you're running a lot of outboard gear in terms of, say, pedals or extra effects. Is that the case
No,
live as well?
the way it's been going lately. I mean, all my gigs have been straight ahead hard rock, and
Yeah.
that's been fine with me. I mean, I used to be the guy with a million gizmos
Mm-hmm.
and the huge pedal board and all that stuff. So it's been kind of nice to get back to just plug and play aspect of it. I mean, with Whitesnake, I do use delay and maybe a tiny bit of reverb in the loop,
Uh-huh.
but that's about it.
Okay.
And like I'm not really a big fan of chorus at all, the sound of chorus. So I tend to shy away from that as it is. So yeah, man, just kind of Les Paul into a Marshall kind of tone, or a Friedman, and keep it simple.
Yeah, great, man. Very cool. I guess comparing your earlier solo albums, as you said, like the instrumental with the sort of fusion influences. Although there's a lot of stuff on there as well. There's some blues, there's some country tinge stuff. There's one track, I can't remember the name, but it sounds like a demented circus act gone from Mars or something. It's crazy.
That's got to be Fire Island, I'm sure.
That's the one. That's it. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I ended up kind of writing the circus melody over that progression.
Loved it.
Yeah.
So good.
That was I wrote a bizarre progression there, a bizarre riff, and I was trying to figure out what the heck to play over it for a melody, and I thought the only thing that's really going to work is something kind of out there that and I think it moved up a fourth. It's kind of like a blues progression in an odd way. It's modulated like a blues progression would. So yeah, that was what I came up with for the melody.
Nice.
After the yeah.
Where did all these influences come from? So when you were starting out, what kind of stuff were you listening to that's kind of stuck?
Well, I mean, all these that conversation always needs to begin with that my parents were classical musicians, so
Okay, yeah.
growing up in the house, there was always classical music, and so that helped me kind of get started. I mean, they started me on cello at 3 and piano at 7, but
Wow.
I didn't like it. Basically, I was like, I was too young, and I didn't really understand that you could eventually like music and you're playing music that you like. And once I heard AC/DC, that's when I wanted to play guitar. So that's the hard rock thing, heavy metal is what got me into doing this.
Okay, cool.
And I kind of came full circle. So to answer your question more directly, the stuff that got me into it: AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, Scorpions. Those were all kind of the ones that I was wearing out when I was a kid.
Okay, awesome, man. Very cool. Oh, I've heard you mention another Australian player, Brett Garsed, as an influence on some of your stuff. How did you hear about him?
Yeah, so his partner on the instrumental albums he was making, TJ Helmerich,
Yeah.
was one of my first guitar teachers. So
Okay.
TJ and I met, I guess, when I was probably about 14. I started taking lessons from him, and he was just kind of starting the 8-finger thing at that time.
Okay.
So he was kind of who got me going on that. And so eventually he went out to GIT and started working at Cherokee Studios and met Brett.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I went out there to go to GIT, which was a couple of years after TJ, that I was able to meet Brett and hang out with him a little bit. And, obviously, I still think, Brett's one of the greatest guitar players in the world. And I still idolize him. So even back then, you can imagine I was like 19 years old or something like that when I met him. So, him and TJ both had a big impact on me for sure.
Nice, very cool. So that's now you were brought up on the East Coast. Obviously, GIT's on the other side of the country. Did you, after your time there, did you hang around or did you get back home?
I hung around for one more year to work at Cherokee Studios.
Hmm.
So same thing. TJ kind of got me in there. He's like, "I'll get you a job," and I was trying to stick it out there, but I was kind of miserable, man. I wasn't making my living with the guitar. I didn't have the guitar in my hands, and that made me really bummed out. I didn't feel like I was on the right path, and I just thought, it's going to be easier for me to go back to the Chicago area where I'm from and teach and play gigs, and I just want to do that right now. So I made the move back there, and had a cool era of doing all that. Be very busy teaching 70 students a week and playing gigs on weekends with my band or whatever bands I was in, and then eventually all that led me to New York. It's a kind of a long story, but eventually I ended up going out to New York, and that's been my home now for the last, gosh, almost 17 years.
Cool. Now you did a very long run on the Rock of Ages production. Was that your first kind of big break, or was that your break into full-time playing?
No, my full-time break into playing was when I moved to New York, and that was for a show called Love Janis. That was about Janis Joplin. So
Okay.
um, in Chicago, it had run for like 2 months. So that this girl I was playing with in her band in Chicago, her name was Kathy Richardson. She got the role as Janis Joplin
Okay. Yep.
in that show. So when she was going to do it in New York, I asked in. She got me in as the guitar player essentially, and I thought, well, this will probably run 2 months. I put my stuff in storage, told my students, I'll see you in a couple months, and it ended up running for 2 years. So by the time it closed, I was already full time New Yorker. But that
Gotcha.
experience did really help me understand how the Rock of Ages thing worked, and when you're in New York, man, the theater world just finds you. You end up getting theater gigs even if you don't want them. And yeah, and Rock of Ages was a great experience for me. I mean, that was ran over 6 years, and same deal. I think when it started, we were like, "What's this going to last? Like a month, maybe?"
Hmm.
And 6 years later, it totally changed my financial reality and led me to so many great things.
Are you a great reader? Was that part of that gig initially, at least, to learn stuff?
At the very beginning, it was a little part of it. I mean, I'm an okay, I can read, but I do so little of it on my gigs that I get super rusty and
Sure.
to the point where I'm not good at it. Um, but I basically what happened is I have a friend who lives a couple blocks from me who does do all the pit stuff, and he does a lot of reading. And he asked me if I'd ever be interested in subbing for him on his shows, and I said yeah. And I was kind of weary of it though because I thought I'm not a great reader. He said no, no, no. Here's the way it really works: is that when you're a part of a rhythm section on a pit gig, they get you audio and you get to rehearse it at home for a few weeks before you even come in. So
Okay. Okay.
I said, okay, well, that's good because, as soon as I hear that, I always feel better about stuff because I'll bust my ass to get anything together.
Yeah. Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that's gotten me ahead, really, is I'm the guy that'll go, all right, well, I guess I got to practice this 12 hours a day to get it together then,
Hmm.
even though it makes no financial sense. But I subbed for him on a few shows, and the last one was the show Tarzan that Phil Collins wrote the music
Oh,
for.
okay. Yep.
And I
Yep.
mean, these are just pit gigs, no one saw you or anything. But
Yep.
for me, it was good because I was brushing up on my reading and getting my playing sharp and meeting people. And living in New York, you never know. Someday I might want to have a full time pit gig. It's not really anything I aspire to right now, but you never know.
Sure. Yep.
Uh, and so, anyway, sorry for the long winded answer.
No, this
Eventually,
is
that
great.
led to Rock of Ages.
Okay. Now, Rock of Ages was a little different, though. You weren't so much in the pit for that. You were rocking out on stage.
Exactly. On stage, had speaking lines, had some choreography where, I had to fight with an actor, like hit him with the top of my guitar while I was playing a solo. During another solo, you had to flip the guy off. And, so I mean, it was intense in that way. It was like, totally different than other gigs. It would, if you would have botched a solo or a part, they wouldn't have cared. But if you would have botched something like that, like standing in the right place at the right time or
Okay.
saying the line, that would upset people, greatly. So it's funny how the priorities shift on a theater gig like that.
Yeah. Wow. And in terms of gear and stuff, would that be another direct sort of gig? Are you running like the Axe Effects again?
Yeah, we started with amps on that, and that was kind of a poor choice, honestly, because as you do something 8 shows a week with no guitar tech,
Yeah.
and you're hung out to dry out there in front of an audience, if something goes wrong, they're not going to stop a show.
Yeah, sure.
So eventually we thought, thankfully we ended up changing theaters after about a year and a half of it. We moved to a different theater, and that gave us the opportunity to kind of press the restart button and do stuff that that we would have done if how they say hindsight is always 20/20. I mean, we were saying this was a mistake. We got tubes going bad on us and stuff like this, running these things 8 shows a week, and
Yeah, sure.
you just go, man, why didn't we just use a fractal? I mean, and it also was not really a gig where your guitar was that loud in the house for about 90% of it.
Okay.
It got loud a lot. So it's not like, Eric Johnson was going to be in the house critiquing what kind of 9-volt battery. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It was kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen the show MASH,
Yes.
where they talk about there's surgical style. There was meatball
surgery, yes.
Rock of Ages was meatball guitar. I mean, it was like, you just want to give people like the 80s rock cliche stuff.
Yeah.
And have all the stuff work seamlessly, nothing go wrong, no technical problems. That was the main goal. Not really like, let me really tweak all of the, my immaculate tone and everything like that. I mean,
sure.
Don't get me wrong. I think everything we played sounded fine. It wasn't like we were up there with bad tone, but it also wasn't amazing tone either.
Okay, sure. Now, I've heard that gig led you to some stints with some other huge bands like Foreigner, and eventually that helped you hook up with Night Ranger.
Well, Night Ranger I had joined before I was in Rock of Ages.
Okay,
so that kind of came through playing with Jim Peterick back in the Chicago area. Jim is the guy who co-founded the band Survivor. He wrote Eye of the Tiger and all those songs.
Yep.
And anyway, he's written a gazillion songs that you've heard of, like all those 38 special tunes, Caught Up in You and Hold On Loosely. And he would have these events called World Stage, and where his friends would come and sing their hits, and he'd have a house band and of course close with Jim's songs. And I was in that house band for a long time, and it was only once a year or twice a year or something like that he'd have these events. Anyway, that is what led me to Night Ranger. Kelly Kagi, the drummer for Night Ranger, would do Jim's World Stage events, so I got to know him, and when they needed somebody, that's what got me in the door there. And the Foreigner thing was, I think, through them seeing me at Rock of Ages tour where Mick got sick.
Okay.
I was actually opening for them with Night Ranger.
Okay.
So, so that's what led to me filling in for Mick Jones in Foreigner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Man, that's awesome. I might ask you now. I've been saving this question, but you work so hard. You pull off so many great gigs. What's your advice for guitar players who want to make a full-time go of it, who might be doing weekend stuff? How do you pull a full-time gig, and how do you keep it?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's how you do it, and you have to kind of have hopefully a little time to give yourself, because I did, and I look back on it and somehow think, how did I have faith in that, and how did I get through that? Because I was struggling, but I didn't realize I was struggling. It was like my decision was always that I'm going to make a living doing this, and whatever money I make is just gravy. I think I just loved doing it.
Yeah, sure.
So you get back what you put into it. The harder you work at it, the more you get back. And I do think that is, like we talked about earlier, I think that is what has gotten me ahead. It's not necessarily natural talent or being the best guitarist or being whatever. Even like people say, oh, well, you're good on stage. It's like, no, it wasn't really that, because I was always working even while I was kind of getting that together. It's like you just stay agreeable, stay humble, be on time, work hard. Try not to choose your battles wisely. It's like you don't want to be a complete wuss, but I'm usually about making other people happy in my band scenarios. It's not about what's going to make me happy. I'm trying to make everybody else happy.
Mm-hmm.
And make them want you around. Until you have that strength, you don't have much.
Yeah.
You got to be in demand, right? So to be in demand, people got to want you. They got to want to be around you and have you around, and that includes being an agreeable person, not just having some chops or something like that. That's just a tiny part of it.
Sure. I've interviewed a few people that have worked with you, people like Gretchen Menn and Jude Gold and Joe Elliott, who introduced us actually, and they've always said you're great to work with and fun to be around, and obviously that's a huge part of making a living in any occupation, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely 100%, and it's the same I think in any profession, like how hard you work is what you get back. And I do really work hard, man. I mean, I'm productive every day with what I do. And it's not just, chops, or it's not just, songwriting, or it's not just networking. There's some people that overdo that, it's a balance of all those things. You kind of got to find the balance and work all of it. But I definitely think it comes down to a daily thing. You need to ask yourself every day, was I productive, and did I work harder than everybody else around me? And if the answer is yes, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I love that attitude. Speaking of Joe Elliott, he did introduce us. How do you know Joe?
So Joe, I met, actually, he was a teacher at GIT when I went there.
GIT.
And
yeah, cool.
we didn't really, we got to know each other on that level back then, but more as friends through TJ then, because TJ was playing with him on some gigs at the Baked Potato and whatnot. Yeah. So when I was out in LA and touched base with TJ, I got to hang with Joe a little bit more on a friendship level.
Yeah, he's great. I love his new record that came out earlier in the year, and great player. Actually, talking about TJ, I think he used TJ's legendary JCM 800 almost exclusively on that last record. I think that amp has seen a lot of gigs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Can I talk about your latest Joel Hoekstra record? Actually, Joel Hoekstra's 13. What's the differentiation? Why the 13 being added?
Well, when I started writing that, I kind of envisioned it being more like a band album, and I got the guys together, and then as things kind of developed, it was like, all right, this isn't going to be a band, it's going to be a project album. And it seemed weird for me once I had that music all recorded that's more song oriented and sounds more like a band, to name it after me, because people would be expecting a lot of guitar heroics and all that stuff. And there's really not a lot of that on there, The solos are somewhat flashy in spots, but so I basically was like, I got to give it a project name, and that way, if I want to do another album like that, which is a definite possibility, it can be done under that banner. So, it started out as David Coverdale's Whitesnake, right, or Richie Blackmore's, right? So think of it like that in terms of Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. I'm not comparing myself on any kind of success level to Richie, but just in terms of where I was coming from with Joel Hoekstra's 13.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a great record. As you mentioned about the guitar playing, the solos are very succinct. We're often dealing with like a 16-bar solo, very traditional, I guess, kind of rock song, vocal songwriting kind of an approach.
That was the whole deal, because, here I'd had Undefined Out and The Moon Is Falling, and then 13 acoustic songs, which was, very mellow and almost easy listening. But all those were instrumental, And then my career kind of took off with the whole Night Ranger and Whitesnake thing, and Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Rock of Ages. And I'd gotten all these fans that are more into hearing vocal songs, like hard rock stuff. And also, in each of those bands, with Night Ranger, I didn't get to write a whole lot.
Yeah, sure.
And with Whitesnake, I'd only done the Purple album. I was kind of eager to show that I could write some songs too, in that genre. So that it was the natural fit, and to get a deal with Frontiers and be able to release that worldwide and everything was fantastic. Like right while I was out on the first tour with Whitesnake, and so it was a great step forward for me.
Oh, that's great. The vintage modern kind of sprung to mind as I've been listening to it. I think the opening tracks, that Say Goodbye to the Sun, that sounds like it's in drop D flat to me, sort of chugging along down low. And then there'll be other tunes like Long for the Day that are a little more straight ahead. I won't say classic rock, but that kind of ballpark.
I describe it as Dio-ish at its heaviest and Foreigner-ish at its lightest.
Okay.
That's what I call it.
Ah, nice. Yeah, cool. That's a cool word picture. Nice. And what was your approach to guitars on that record? You, I guess, obviously using amps back in a studio setting.
Yeah, that's all the Friedman BE 100, the whole album.
Yeah.
And my Gibson Gold Top Les Paul for almost all of it.
Okay.
I used my Black Custom on, I'd say, think of the heavier tracks. So like Say Goodbye to the Sun and Kill or Be Killed, which was a bonus track, or Dying to Live. Those were my Black Custom, the heavy songs.
Okay. Nice. There's some great 12-string textures on What We Believe. What guitar do you pull out for that?
That was a Taylor, I believe. I can't really remember the model number. I don't think it was the 854 CE. It was my friend Tommy Kessler's, I think, that I used, and I think we maybe just mic'd it, and we didn't use a DI. I think I forget what the deal was, but yeah.
Cool.
There you go.
Sounds great. And who's singing on that track? Because you've got the guys on most of the record. Who's the female vocal on that?
Yeah, it's this girl Chloe Lowry who sings with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. She's amazing. Ridiculous. Wow.
Yeah, she's fantastic on that track. It's so good.
Yeah, she's actually, truly an amazing vocalist. Really, really amazing.
And there's a crazy synth solo. Is that Derek Sherinian?
Yeah. Derek did all the keyboards on the whole album.
Who else is playing on the record? It's such a killer lineup.
So that's Vinny Appice on drums and Tony Franklin on bass, and the singers are Russell Allen and Jeff Scott Soto.
Yeah, fantastic.
And then myself and Derek, who we mentioned. So, and then there's some other guests here and there, like Chloe's on the one song, and but yeah, that's basically the lineup.
Great. And amongst all your writing and all your gigs and stuff, have you got time to write for the next 13 project?
I do. I can always have time. Yeah, I can always get it done. It's just a matter of whether or not, Russell's been really busy, and that's kind of always been the holdup. Russell's, in Symphony X and also Adrenaline Mob, and he does Trans-Siberian Orchestra with me as well. So, he's in 3 bands, and so it's finding the time to, where he could record it and potentially even do a little something with it for me. So, but yeah, we're talking a little bit more about that right now, about trying to figure out how to get that done. And then it's also the business end of things from Frontiers, getting the right offer and all that stuff.
Sure. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, as usual, it looks like the next fairly considerable chunk of time you've got locked in with the Trans-Siberian tour and then the Whitesnake record coming out. I assume you're going to tour that record?
Yeah, that's the plan. There's supposed to be a big tour next year. So, the way it could shape up, it could be maybe a little Cher early on again. We'll see. Okay. Not sure about that. Yeah. And then the Whitesnake tour and then the TSO tour at the end of the year. So 2018 could be a real monster year for me.
Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. I'm guessing the best way for people to keep up with you is through your social media. So Instagram, You on Facebook?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can link over to any of it from just going to my .com, which is joelhoekstra.com.
Okay.
My name is difficult, I know, so I'll spell it Joel, Joel, right? And then Hoekstra, Hoekstra.
Awesome.
joelhoekstra.com, and then you'll see on the side there's a little link to any of the social media stuff, and people can go there and say hello to me, and I'll always get back.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, Joel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And all the best for what looks to be a super exciting future.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Make sure to send me any links to this, and I'll be sure to get it up.
All right, there you go. My conversation with Joel Hoekstra, sideman to the stars and with an incredible solo catalogue as well. Super cool. The track you're hearing now is Gorilla Man 2000, in fact. That is so good. There you go. Thank you, Joel. Thank you for your time. Thank you for wandering around and getting the Wi-Fi sorted. Thank you to Joe Elliott for introducing me to Joel. And thank you to you. Thanks for listening and tuning into the Guitar Speak podcast. It's really my pleasure to bring these conversations with you. Don't go away. There's so much good stuff coming up on the show. So be subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts from. Come and say hello to us on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us through Patreon. And actually on Facebook, we also have the Guitar Speak Forum, which is a closed group where you can come and discuss any of the episodes and just anything guitar-wise going on in your world. We would love to hear from you and have you join that group. All right, I'm going to let Joel take us out. I'll catch you next time on the Guitar Speak podcast. Bye now.